it's a drive inside me, that just an urgency inside me that I have to get this out because I believe in it.
Is it a point of expression?
It's certainly a way of expressing what's inside me. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So the thing though, I have a very different stance on passion, which is why it's the first thing that I ask.
Interesting.
People who listen to my podcast know my stance on passion.
Yes.
And it's not to say that passion is a fallacy,
Yep.
but I believe it's transferable.
Sure.
And I think that we could get to a point where we agree on this,
Yes.
because you also mentioned other passions that you had.
Yes.
I think that the word passion, at its core,
Yes.
it works. It
Yes.
makes sense. It's fine.
Yes.
But the way that people use passion today,
Yes.
and maybe it's more my age,
Yes.
they use passion as almost an excuse for a pursuit. They get so lost
Yep.
and deep in this
Yes.
that it can dictate their actions and
Yes.
control their actions
Yes.
with lacking responsibility.
And she asked me that, what would we regret doing? We need a change of lifestyle. What are we going to do? And that was the epiphany, I suppose, or the moment of change. We thought, you know what? Don't need to do this anymore. It's not great money. I found myself in depression, and my wife was actually getting quite worried about me. And no one would ever have thought, Pete Howard, depressed? No. But yeah, it happened. It happened. So other than then, I wasn't very motivated then. I found that really tough. And it was getting quite serious.
Yeah.
But I was at church one day, sitting at the back, just literally in the dark at the back, just not knowing what to do with myself. My wife realised I was getting to the point where it wasn't healthy. It was getting quite serious. And she convinced me to go up for prayer, actually, to the front of the church. So I did.
Really?
Changed it. I basically just gave it to God, and it was turned off. It was incredible. Second time it's happened to me in my life. Tunnel vision. Does life sometimes seem like a tunnel to you, uphill with no light at the end? At times do you feel that you're lost and alone and silently scream for a friend? Those screams become echoes of words from your past, returning to hurt you again. Then searching the shadows that dwell in your mind, you find all your failures again. It's easy to feel that this tunnel is real, convinced there's no way you can cope. But where there are shadows, there has to be light, and where there is light, there is hope. So stop for a moment and look past those walls, and watch as they crumble away. There's light in the sky and the echoes have gone. You'll only hear one voice today. The Lord calls your name in the rustle of leaves. He shouts in the crash of a wave. He sings you a song in the voice of a bird. It's you that he's longing to save. That wind on your cheeks is the breath of the Lord. His tears can be seen in the dew. The clouds drifting high in the sky overhead are filled with his dreams, just for you. Instead of your tunnel, run into his arms. Say yes to the one God above. Those arms bought your freedom when nailed to a cross. Now, let them surround you with love.
So, I go pretty natural, don't even do much of an intro.
Sure.
I just start flowing with it, and that's pretty unique, I guess. Most people kind of want to do an intro, but what I actually do is I put a bit of background music behind it, and then it just goes straight into it. So
Sure.
Dependent on the guest, like for example, the iconic guy, he, for me, has helped me with quite a lot. So
Yep.
I put like so much attention and
Yep.
focus into it. So, for example, an episode that like this morning that I did, it took me so long to record it that it's
Right.
not really worth me spending
Yep.
10 hours on making the best intro. And then additionally, for him, there's a lot of content out there on him, where for my friend, actually to be fair, there's probably a bit of content on my friend as well,
Okay.
but not as much as the head of Iconic, for example.
Fair enough. I
So-
can understand that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's a good thing as well. You might want to put your phone on
That's
mute.
right. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
That's on flight mode.
yes, perfect. Actually, I'm heading to London in 2 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah,
How long are you going to be there for?
2 weeks.
That'll do.
Yeah.
Got
So,
contacts?
well, my friend's flown me over.
Oh, really?
So the co-host of this podcast,
Yeah.
he is running an ultra marathon. Going to be
Okay.
the youngest in the UK to do it, and
That's pretty cool.
well, actually, youngest
Ultra marathon. How big is that?
102 kilometers. Yeah. So all around London he's running, and he wants me to be his videographer. So gonna get the drone up.
Nice.
Yeah, get a camera over there.
Love it.
And-
You've been to London before, haven't you?
Yeah, I used to go every 3 months.
Yeah.
So when I was in Germany, I had to
Yeah.
renew my visa.
Yes, of course.
Go back and forth all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
London's my favourite city in the world.
Oh, is it?
Well, favorite
like
that,
it. It's all right.
that I've been to.
Yeah, okay.
So-
fair enough. Go to Vancouver if you get a chance to.
Really?
That's pretty special, yeah.
Okay, interesting. In terms of scenery or like...
People, scenery, very similar to Sydney. Colder, obviously. Lovely people. Not a big fan of Americans.
yeah, Canadians.
Yeah, Canadians, awesome. Love it. So if I hadn't come to Australia, I would have gone to Canada.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's good. When I was 22, I think it was, me and a friend went over to to Canada and spent 3 months crossing it on a motorbike.
Seriously?
Yeah, west coast to
That
east
would have been
coast.
cold.
It was amazing.
Wow, okay.
Lots of memories.
Yeah. So whereabouts in the UK are you from?
Guildford,
Guildford.
which is in
Whereabouts?
Surrey. It's about, if
Okay.
most folk know where Heathrow is.
Yeah.
It's about 30 miles, probably southwest of Heathrow.
Okay.
That's sort of, it's called the home counties, which is all the counties that sit around London.
Right, okay, so you're pretty south then.
Very much the southerner. Yeah, that's right. And then I lived in Brighton, which is right on the south
Okay,
coast.
yeah.
Which I enjoyed. So that's right. Yeah.
Awesome, all right. So I'm going to be staying in St Albans around there. So, yeah.
My office was in Harpenden, which is the town directly next door to St Albans.
That's actually exactly where I'm staying.
You're going to be in Harpenden?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I know it very, very well.
Okay, that's crazy. So my friend lives there.
Okay.
And yeah, we're still in the ultra marathon, do the podcast with him.
Okay.
And he has a lot of followers on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why he's flying me over.
I love it.
Trying to make it a really nice, professional video for him.
Okay.
And yeah, something that
Which you will, I'm sure.
hopefully.
Having seen your work.
Yeah, the drone I think is going to make the footage really, really good.
Okay.
The drone footage tells a story.
So what will you do with 102 Ks he's doing? You'll be in a vehicle going ahead of him, then setting up, and he'll come past, and then he'll kind of do that?
He's in a race.
Yeah.
So he's racing against like Olympians and that.
Okay.
So I actually got no clue what that situation will look like.
Okay.
He literally just said, Nick, it cost me less money to fly you over to do all my videography than it costs for me to hire someone.
Right.
So he's like, let's just get you over here. We'll knock out a few podcast episodes whilst
I like it.
and do everything, catch up, because we're doing the educational platform together as well.
Got it.
And yeah, basically, literally just going from there.
That's going to be awesome. You'll get to know the route beforehand, will you? That's not kept a secret.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to plan, and you might be catching it. Who knows? You'll be taxiing, get someone with a car, but you'll be able.
His parents probably will. I think we're staying in a hotel. Maybe they're not.
I'd imagine.
Not too sure. I think he mentioned something like that. So
but how long does that take? A race that long?
He's aiming for around 13 to 15 hours. So yeah, pretty much the whole day.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
People can do that. I don't get it.
There's some people who do it in like, I think, 8 hours.
That's crazy.
And it's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
My son and I walked the Kepler track in New Zealand once, which is 60 Ks.
Seriously, that would have taken days, but?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, we did over 3 days. We did it at our church. Lads and dads. So it was six lads. We went over there. He was about 12 years old, I think it was.
Wow.
But while we were walking it was just relaxed. You basically do about 20 Ks a day. It's quite vertical, some of it, obviously. But there's these guys running past with, running gear on and stuff like that, and they do it in, a few hours.
Yeah.
Basically, they take half a day and they run up and they do 60 Ks, they come back, and it's like running on mountains.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Very impressive.
Would never be me. I can't.
Fair enough.
I don't want to. For me, I feel like it's just a waste of time for me.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be. I would much rather be working than doing that exercise.
Yeah.
Like, as much as I try to exercise, I just couldn't be doing 60 kilometers.
I must admit, there must be immense satisfaction in it, but I think if I did it once, maybe, but then to just keep doing that to yourself, I'm not sure I could do that.
Oh, I'll leave it to them. I'll leave it to
reasonable.
them. Yeah. Well, Pete, I appreciate you, hopping on the episode today. If you could, I'd love to, firstly, give context to the listeners who are listening to who you are, but more specifically after that, if you could give also, some context on who you are. But for the listeners who are tuning in today and the people who are watching, Pete is a family friend, very good family friend of ours. And honestly, my parents have always told me that, I've got to meet Pete, I've got to speak with Pete. And I was like, sure, let's do it. And probably the first time we met was maybe 3 months ago.
Oh, right.
You came around for dinner.
I think so, yeah.
Probably, around then. Hit it off. Great chat ever since. And obviously now you're trying to, grow your own personal brand as well.
Indeed.
Which is why we're here today. Kind of take you behind the scenes of what the podcast looks like. And basically try and get things out there. Get on your first podcast.
Yeah.
And speak a little bit more. So Pete, I'd love if you could, talk a little bit about yourself and your background.
All right. So Peter Howard. I've been for 25 years a management consultant, running a company called Accord Consulting. We focused on helping drive change in large companies, BP, Unilever, others that people will know. A lot of travel around the world, that type of thing. I've just hit, I won't tell you exactly how old, but a ripe old age. And I've decided to give up that corporate life and that type of thing and focus on my passion, which is actually writing. For all my life, I've written poetry. I've written a couple of books. I haven't got them published yet. The poetry's been published, but the book's not been published, although it has been accepted by a fairly large publisher got to do a little bit of editing, bring it down from 130,000 to about 110,000 words, which is quite daunting, actually. But and they've asked also for a second book as well. So really, what I do is I like to make a difference in people's lives. That's always been a passion for mine. One of my values is to make a positive difference. That's why I also sit on the advisory board for Mercy Ships International, which a lot of people know Mercy Ships, and I think your dad actually has been on Mercy Ships.
Yes, he has
served on that. So big passion of mine. So I'm looking to get serious about my writing. As I say, I've just given up my career. We're just moving house, in fact, and the whole point of that is for me to be able to focus on writing.
Are you able to say where to?
Yeah, to Foster, place in New South Wales, northern New South Wales, called Foster. Beautiful environment on a lake. I love water. That sort of inspires my creativity and so forth. So that's what we're doing. Getting heavily involved in a church up there as well, which is something that's a big passion of mine. And I'm very excited for the future, if I'm honest, and looking to, as you rightly said, Nick, to get my brand up and running.
Yeah.
And you seem to be quite a good role model to do that.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that, Pete. I think that, the modern day brand is becoming so much easier to do. And that's there for a variety of reasons. I think that the perception of how someone portrays themselves to a larger audience can often be manipulated.
Yep.
And for a good cause as well. But, obviously for a bad. But in this case, we would prefer it to be good.
Of course.
The people who you look up to, the people who I look up to, they are truly just one of us.
Indeed.
But they've got so much social proof by other people that they just have a sense and aura around them that you can't necessarily point out and say, see that little bubble around them? That's the thousands and millions of followers that they've got on Instagram. No.
Indeed.
It's just that's their aura, that's their essence, but people validate them and
they're attracted to that, aren't they?
Exactly.
People are attracted to that sort of thing, and they pick the people where they feel there's a fit.
Yeah. And
I think it doesn't last if you're not good, if you're not authentic.
You'll get caught out.
Get that bubble, but I like the way to describe it as a bubble.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a bubble.
Honestly, we all are looking for a bubble.
Fair enough.
Some people's bubble will come through the external. Some people's will come through the internal. You've probably been doing the internal for quite a long time, right?
Yep.
I think that you probably have to have the internal to do the external. If you go for the external first, then the internal will probably break, and then your external will be popped, and then you're back into the internal. And I think that happens quite a bit.
Right.
But you've done it. You've done the internal. Now you've got the skills and let's just say the value, because it's a value exchange at the end of the day, right? For people to listen to this podcast, they have.
Well, I hope I have. I'm sure people will be the judge of that. But, I mean, there's a lot of effort's gone into writing a lot of that stuff, and I hope it's worthwhile. I'm told it is by many people, but the proof will be in the pudding.
Exactly. Now, one thing that even in that intro, Pete, something that came in my mind immediately.
Yep.
You talked about the passion that you have. I'll ask one simple question.
Hey guys, I don't want to interrupt this episode, but gotta do what I gotta do. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you leave a comment if you enjoyed it. If you want any to give any feedback, even just leave that below. We're open to everything. Join the Patreon, guys. There's gonna be a lot more stuff on there. We want to hear from you guys as well. We want to get you involved. If you want to be beta testers to the SCULPTED app, let me know. I can make that happen. Try and get involved at any level. What we're doing at Live Free, guys, make sure you check what we're doing there. Liam's got his own personal YouTube channel. He's always uploading. I've got my own personal YouTube channel that I've started uploading twice a month now. It's going to be cinematic like I am now, right? I've got the light above, got a cool camera. That's what I'm going to be working on, guys. So make sure you follow Live Free Diaries. SCULPTED app. We're doing great stuff over there. Additionally, we want to grow this podcast, guys. And the only way we can do that is through your guys' help. So make sure you subscribe, listen to us on all audio platforms. We're everywhere. So make sure you interact with us. Make sure that you help us grow, because the only way that we can grow this podcast is through you. We'll get better guests. We've always had great guests from the get-go, but we'll get even better guests on. Production value will go up. I've got my studio, but we need to get Liam his studio, and the only way we can do that is through monetizing this platform. So make sure you do that, guys. And I'll go back to the episode. I'll let you go.
How did you know that was your passion?
Because it never leaves me.
Why is that?
It never leaves me. It burns inside me. I find writing incredibly easy.
Okay.
And that's not a boast, because I truly believe it's a gift. One of the talents I've been given by God, which is why it's easy. But it just never leaves me. I actually get quite emotional sometimes when I'm writing. It's just burning inside, because I honestly believe deep down, such an overused phrase, but my whole being is behind this belief that I have that one day my writing is going to make a difference, and I don't want that to sound arrogant. I want that to sound passion, because that's what it is. It's what drives me.
What does passion mean? What does passion mean to you then?
What does it mean to me? It means you'd give up a lot of things to do it. If you're passionate about something, it has a huge value for you, and you're prepared to make sacrifices to do that. Mm-hmm. We've just built a house which we absolutely love. We've sold that house to support this. My wife and I, in fact, she asked me only 2.5 months ago. She said, "What would we regret, Pete, if we're 80 years old, for example? What would we think we regret that we haven't done that we can no longer do because we're 80?" And both of us said, "Getting your writing out there."
That was the night that you came to ours.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. It was well remembered.
Yeah.
Now that was the start of the journey, and since then we've sold our house. We're moving a few weeks' time, and very, very, very excited about it. And we've chosen a place where I can write.
Yeah. Okay. So, how did you figure out that you had this affinity towards writing?
I got great pleasure from writing. I found it quite easy, and I used to, as a little boy, I wrote something actually once in a classroom. And it was just a poem. I was just dawdling, really wrote a poem, and I got told off for not paying attention. And the English teacher read it and took it to the head of department, and it ended up in the school magazine, which I thought, oh, that's wacky. It was just a little poem that I was doing, all the rest of it. And so I appreciated the feedback. Got a lot of feedback from that. Continued to write poems. Began to be asked to perform them in my local church in England. I got asked to do radio in the UK. It ended up actually, I started as local, but it ended up as national radio, like a thought for the day. I was reading poems for the thought for the day, and the feedback was consistently quite positive. So I've kind of kept going with that, and I guess that's, I enjoy feedback. I think most people do, but I think the feedback is what really spurred me on to think this is being appreciated by people. It's not just me that enjoys doing it, but they're clearly a folk who enjoy the end result. So I felt I'd continue to do that, based on what I said earlier about wanting to make a difference.
Two things that come to mind. Firstly, you've got a voice that complements writing. Okay. 100%.
Thank you.
And that's what came to mind. And the saying that people typically say is you've got a voice for radio, or like a face for radio, something.
That can be an insult.
Which is always an insult, I think. In this case, I think...
Probably true.
In this case, I think you're fine. I think you could be on a podcast.
That's a bit of luck. Okay, yeah.
But you do also have a very good voice, which I think, good, is a good thing.
All right.
The other thing that comes to mind is you mentioned passion quite a lot. Now, I have a very different stance on passion, which is why it's the first thing that I ask.
Interesting.
And people who listen to my podcast know my stance on passion.
Yes.
And it's not to say that passion is a fallacy, but I believe it's transferable.
Sure.
And I think that we could get to a point where we agree on this, because you also mentioned other passions that you had.
Yes.
I think that the word passion, at its core, it works. It makes sense. It's fine.
Yes.
But the way that people use passion today, and maybe it's more my age, they use passion as almost an excuse for a pursuit. They get so lost and deep in this that it can dictate their actions and control their actions with lacking responsibility.
Okay.
I'm not saying that this is the case.
No, I'm doing it.
Just giving you context.
Sure.
So, to fill me in with your perspective, you mentioned Christianity being a quote-unquote passion.
Yeah. Core to my being, actually. Yeah. Christianity is core to who I am. Yes.
I was thinking, I think that you more meant the action.
Yes.
Going to church, things like that, being around. That's more.
Okay.
That I may have misinterpreted it, but
sure.
That's one thing. The mercyships as my dad as well. That's also one thing. The writing, obviously. If you were to give me a list of all of your passions, and then a number of which dictates the relevance and importance in your life, maybe you want to write it down for me or something. Do maybe if you want, you can visualize it. I don't know if you wanted to.
Look, I can do it on here. So if I was to say, I'm going to list them all, then I'm going to number them. So I'm going to put down writing.
Left-handed as well.
I am a lefty. Writing, photography. Hello, it stopped.
It went to the rubber.
Did it?
Yeah. If you double tap it.
Got it. I'm going to call it making a difference, which kind of embraces a lot of what I do.
Okay.
When I say making a difference, making a positive difference.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put developing, or perhaps a better word would be growing people.
Okay.
Again, that's probably an overriding thing, and I see writing and photography and the training that I've been doing for so many years as tools that would help that. So I guess these
Vessels,
aren't these are vessels, yeah. So if I was to put these in order, they're probably things that I value hugely, and therefore they are passions because my values are very, very important to me. I'm going to put writing as number one.
Yeah.
I'm going to put number two as making a difference. Number three, developing people. Number four, photography, I think, and photography is just something I do for an immense amount of pleasure. I wouldn't say I'm passionate about it, but I get a huge amount of pleasure. I'm a very visual person, which if you heard my poetry, you'd understand whilst it's words, it's very visual. So that's probably how I'd categorize those things, and they're the things that are most important.
Okay.
All right. Other than the natural things, my family and those types of things, which I think that's a given that you're caring for your family and so forth.
Okay. So, writing is your number one.
Yes.
Making a difference is number two.
Mm-hmm.
Helping people.
Developing people.
Developing people.
Yep.
Number
Terrible
three.
Writing, obviously.
That was like a big.
Yeah. What have I done?
I was like, it looks like.
Yeah, it's a D.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
Okay.
Developing people.
And
making
photography.
A difference. And sorry, photography is the last one. Yeah,
okay.
That's right. Yeah.
So, 4 key core passions, you could say.
Yep.
Obviously, this is different from your ideology.
Sure.
But what in your life, if I was to pour this cup every single day for you, or you were to do that action every single day, and you just loved the way the water dripped out of the mug, and you're like, oh, I could get used to this.
Yes.
And every day now, when I come downstairs, I catch Pete Howard in my garage pouring this water because it was the best thing ever. That could be.
He sounds a bit of a weirdo if that's the case, but I'm with you.
But that is arguably a passion for someone, right? So, but the context being
possibly, yeah, I'm with you.
The context being,
yes.
What do you define as the thing that gives you a passion? Is it the action? Is it the result? Is it the pursuit? That, like this guy, he was he was in love with the water.
Yeah. I'm going to answer you by saying it's a calling. It's something that's been put in me, and it's got to come out. It's so full inside me. It just has to come out, and I think until I get it out, the writing that I'm supposed to do, and I don't know how much of it that there is, it will always be this yearning. This. I mean, I'm going to use the word passion again. I may not be using the right word, but it's a drive inside me, that just an urgency inside me that I have to get this out because I believe in it.
Is it a point of expression?
It's certainly a way of expressing what's inside me. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So the thing though, with your 4 passions that you've written down, writing is a self-expression. Photography is a self-expression. Developing people isn't too much.
No, not at all. Making
a difference, could be.
Yeah. That's kind of I'm going to call that a value actually. So I think one of my values, I'll tell you, my family, integrity, and making a difference. They're the sort of 3 things that drive my behaviour.
So, just for context, that's what the Sculpted podcast logo is.
Okay.
So the 3 pillars.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, there you go. So we're on track.
I think maybe were you briefed to?
No, not at all. Not at all. It could well have been.
Yeah.
I might have had a sneak peek at it, but no, I didn't realise that. But so those values, and I've trained a lot of people on values and the importance of values, because values drive behaviour.
Yeah.
As does attitude. So those things are things that drive my behaviour. In terms of communication, in developing people, for example, the tools, let's say, would be for me photography and my writing. My writing therefore has subcategories. I've written a book, I've written a play, and I've written a lot of poetry, which just is the easiest thing in the world.
Really? Why's that?
Because I think it's a gifting.
Okay. Were you always good at, like you mentioned when you were younger? I
think so. It just came easily. Give you an example. Your mum and dad were around having a meal on Sunday evening.
Yep.
Grace, my wife, just happened to mention to your mum, he can just write a poem. If I told him to write a poem on pink flowers, he'd do it. So I went away, and 3 minutes later, I came back with 3 verses on pink flowers. I was just sitting there while they were talking. I just did it and then wrote to them. They were like, "What the?" So which is quite weird.
Okay. Hey, write me a poem.
Oh, you're kidding.
About podcasts.
Write me a poem about podcasts.
We'll give you 3 minutes, all right?
All right.
Just sit here.
All right. That'll do. Couple of verses.
All right.
A way to communicate, share with your friends, a tool to disseminate hobbies and trends, a use for the internet, thrown round the world, heroes with microphones, their passions unfilled.
Good.
There you go.
I like that.
Just silly.
That was good. That was good. All right. Well, point proven.
Well, I hope so. I don't know. That's probably pretty rubbish, but it's just a quick, under pressure.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yeah, look, I've got some poems here. If you wanted to hear a proper poem, I mean, there's some examples, but it's entirely up to you.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah,
but I want to go into the. So my head's still very in the space from the podcast that I had this morning.
Okay, I can understand that.
For the listeners, I've got 3 podcasts today. I'm going to be sticking with this theme a lot because this is a common thought pattern that I have whenever I'm speaking with someone.
Yeah.
And it's trying to learn about them. And with my friend Jack, he has a very good understanding. He's a psychologist.
Yeah.
And we share a lot of different things together. And the things that we talk about, I want to try and see your perspective of. I want to try and get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now, what is your core motivations? Now, I'll expand on this to give you some help in what I mean by this, because it's a very broad statement. The analogy is rice: reward, ideology, coercion, ego. These are the 4 key motivators that will force action.
Sure.
For you, what would you say the reward is in anything that you do to motivate you to achieve said objective or to do said action?
Give me rice again.
Reward, ideology, coercion, ego.
Okay.
So we'll go through them. Let's start off with reward. What's the reward for you?
Hey guys, I want to interrupt this episode, but gotta do what I gotta do. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you leave a comment if you enjoyed it. If you want any to give any feedback, even just leave that below. We're open to everything. Join the Patreon, guys. There's gonna be a lot more stuff on there. We want to hear from you guys as well. We want to get you involved. If you want to be beta testers to the SCULPTED app, let me know. I can make that happen. Try and get involved at any level. What we're doing at Live Free, guys, make sure you check what we're doing there. Liam's got his own personal YouTube channel. He's always uploading. I've got my own personal YouTube channel that I've started uploading twice a month now. It's going to be cinematic like I am now, right? I've got the light above, got a cool camera. That's what I'm going to be working on, guys. So make sure you follow Live Free Diaries. SCULPTED app. We're doing great stuff over there. Additionally, we want to grow this podcast, guys. And the only way we can do that is through your guys' help. So make sure you subscribe, listen to us on all audio platforms. We're everywhere. So make sure you interact with us. Make sure that you help us grow, because the only way that we can grow this podcast is through you. We'll get better guests. We've always had great guests from the get-go, but we'll get even better guests on. Production value will go up. I've got my studio, but we need to get Liam his studio, and the only way we can do that is through monetizing this platform. So make sure you do that, guys. And I'll go back to the episode. I'll let you go.
So using your rice model, the reward for me, I'm going to say, is not financial. Very, very few authors make money. That's not what I'm about. When I first started writing poetry 25 years ago, I'd actually got enough to put into a book. My dream was to have a book that would go into doctors and dentists.
Okay.
Which may sound weird. You're looking at a puzzle there, but the reason for that is that's when people are a little bit down, they're a bit depressed, they're not enjoying life, and so forth.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do was put something there. A lot of them are Christian. They're encouraging. They're lifting people. They're hopefully, if you like, self-help. I don't know what you'd like to call it. But, and my vision for that was just every penny I got from that, I would just use to print more books and give them away free to doctors and dentists. So like the magazines, like Hello Magazine, you have in dentists and doctors, that sort of thing. So that was my dream for that. It's never been financial. From a Christian perspective, my reward, I think, is that I know I'm getting the word out there, God's word out there, God's principles out there. A lot of the poems are geared towards, for instance, kids or not doing drugs or some mental health and that type of thing. Again, the reward is knowing you've made a difference, and that comes right back to that core value of mine.
So your reward is linked to your ideology? I
think it is, yes. I think so, yeah. If you call it an ideology, I'm going to call it my motivation, if you like. But yeah, that motivates me to make a difference.
Your ideology will still be a massive motivator.
Sure.
So for me, my ideology is the biggest motivator.
Yep.
Ideology is the most powerful motivator.
Yep.
That's why we have people who do crazy things for ideology.
Absolutely.
And
like stopping the traffic with, no more oil, or whatever those protesters are at the moment.
Exactly.
That's a good example. And very powerful.
So I think your reward is linked to your ideology.
I think it is.
Which gives you a sense of fulfillment.
Yep, it does.
Which then links.
I think it will.
Yeah. Well, that's what you would hope, right?
Yep.
And you're kind of coercing yourself to believe that, because it may not be true. But in this case, it's better that you do believe it.
Okay.
But then that's also linked to your ego. Now, your ego, and I'm very open about where my ego lies. I'm very aware that everyone has an ego. But people mask it in a way that's politically or not politically. What's the word that people use? That the modern day politically correct. People mask their ego in a politically correct way.
Yes.
Where I try and often be the exact opposite and say, no, everyone's got an ego.
Sure.
Saying that you don't have an ego is egotistical, and
absolutely.
then judging people for not having having an ego is egotistical, because then it's saying, no, my way of doing it is the right way, and they're just saying, why are you so cocky? You should be more humble. That's very egotistical in my mind. So, again,
well, as I said to you earlier on, in terms of ego, I enjoyed the feedback. It was great. It made me feel I know in terms of my needs. I need feedback. I enjoy positive feedback. Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things that drives me. There's a book, I won't go into the detail because it's probably not the place for it now, but there's a book called I think it's the 5 Love Languages. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No, I haven't.
It's phenomenal, and it talks about some people need physical touch, some people need words of affirmation, some people need gifts. Some people need quality time, and I'm going to forget the other one now. I can't remember what the last one is.
I know.
Acts of service.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. So for me, physical touch and words of affirmation are very important to me. Yeah. So absolutely, I accept that, and that's ego. Words of affirmation, absolutely.
Yeah, you look great today, by the way, Pete.
Thank you.
I'll give you a hug later. Yeah. Okay. So reward.
Yeah.
Ideology. I think your ideology, like me, is very linked in Christianity.
Yep.
I think that.
For sure. No question about it.
Yeah, like ideology is also very intrinsically almost like religious, which is why.
Yeah, the word religious is, I think, often associated with Christianity, and there's Christianity. I do not like religion. Religion is a set of rules and things like that, and principles like that. And yes, I'm a Christian. Christianity is called a religion, but I'm not religious.
Right. Okay. Go into that a little bit more.
Yes, sure. Oh, you want me to now?
Yeah.
Religion is very much, you're a religious person. That's the sort of thing people say, isn't it, very often? And I'm going to say, what do you mean by that? I say, well, you go to church on Sunday and you follow the rules and you've got the 10 Commandments. And they see it as basically following a set of rules, which is why you do something religiously. Yeah. It's in our vernacular, isn't it? Yeah. When people say that, what it means is you've got a set of rules that you follow. No. For me, my Christianity is, and I'm very happy talking about this very openly, it's about having a father who loves me deeply, about being able to be set free from the sins that I want to do and my nature naturally wants to do, whether it be lying or sexual sin or whatever it might be. I have a father who can forgive those, because I slip up like we all do, and I sin every now and again, far more often than I want to.
I thought you almost said the F word, and I was thinking, well, Pete, that's one of them.
No, well, that's right. But no, so it's absolutely not about a set of rules and following the 10 Commandments and stuff. It's just basically accepting that I'm deep down made sinful. There's a Father up in heaven who loves me, and that gives me an immense security. I know where I'm going when I die. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. And I know that there's a guy called Jesus who lived and died, and there's absolutely oodles of historical evidence about his life that he did live. But it's certainly not about rules. God would love me just as much if I never went to church again. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying when I say religion for me is about rules. Yeah. My faith is about love.
Yeah. So similar to the way that I see the word passion being an extension, like almost an extension of the true meaning.
Yep.
I think that's fair to say that religion is also one of those words.
Yes.
That is also kind of used for another purpose.
Yes, I agree.
For a lack of accountability at times. I think the religious one's probably not really lack of accountability, but it's almost like a scapegoat word that you can then just attach to.
Yes.
And it's a very blanket kind of
I'd agree with
statement.
I would absolutely agree.
No, yeah, okay. So your ideology, like mine, is linked to a higher purpose from you, which means that you're always striving to be better.
Yes.
It's very common for a lot of people to strive to become better.
Yeah.
But also some people have a strive to be better, which has a cap on it. And that cap limits them. Yeah. And if they achieve that, or if they see that cap being too far away, it then has a negative spiral, a negative connotation to that downwards effect.
Indeed.
Where they then oh, I'm now a failure. I was talking about this literally before in the episode, where the distance between where you want to be and where your decisions are taking are too far away that your ideology then becomes the gap in between.
Yep.
So for you, you probably have a history of doing the right thing in line with your ideology,
trying to,
which aligns you with it more, right? Now, and it's the exact same as me, right? I will make decisions which aren't in alignment with my ideology, but then I also think about I have to then back every decision with 100% conviction, which is where my ego ties in, so that I then can deal with the repercussions after.
Sure.
Do you relate with that a little bit?
Yeah, I do. That resonates.
Okay. And do you think that's linked to your ego, or do you think that's linked to the reward, or maybe you're self-coercing yourself?
No, I'm not coercing myself. It's just a drive. I think coercion for me is forcing someone to do something against their will, or tricking them into doing something. And I'm not doing that to myself. It very much aligns with my will and so forth. But some of the things I do are very deliberately done to achieve certain goals. For instance, coming here today and sitting down with you, I'm very specific and very open about it. I want to build a brand. I want to get some experience. I respect your platform hugely in what you're building, and I think it would be good for my stuff to be out there potentially. And this is step one for me, I guess, really to build a brand. So I haven't coerced myself to do it, but it's a deliberate decision.
Yeah. So coercion to me can be positive and negative.
Of course.
The example that I give because it's kind of hard to find a realistic positive coercion, because quite often it's very situational. But the most natural that I would give is if I have someone who has extreme beliefs and I believe that it was wrong, and I wanted to kind of guide them to thinking in what I believe the right way, which is also my ego coming in. If I believe that I'm right, that's my ego speaking.
Sure.
So it could be wrong. They could have the right way, but coercion typically is associated with negative connotations. But if I believe that I am positively coercing you, my English, coercing, there we go, coercing you into believing the right thing.
Yeah.
That's where it's obviously got that positive kind of connotation. Do you? Coercion is also the weakest motivation.
It's interesting. I've done quite a lot of training on this around organizational politics, actually, in terms of how that happens. And coercion is, I'm doing it now.
Yeah,
it's typically seen as a negative thing.
Yeah.
And the word does have negative connotations. So the way I've argued this with people who are saying to me, "Oh, coercion is always bad, Pete," as I've actually said to them, well, what's the difference between selling something to somebody?
Agreed.
Are you coercing them? Are you convincing them? Are you presenting all the good sides of something in order to convince them to do it? So coercion, convincing, they're very much perhaps the same thing. You're using tools to convince, to change somebody's mind potentially. So I think if we take out the negative connotation of coercion, then I accept your model from that point of view. But I think the world, I don't know if people would agree with this, I think the world sees coercion in a negative way. And convincing perhaps another word, or compelling somebody. I think they're all in the same boat, that you're using tools to convince people to do things that suit you. You may be right, but if you're coercing them using tools and they're not aware of that, potentially, like a lot of marketing is coercing people on that basis, isn't it? So
it is.
I think we're on the same page. I just think there's a negative connotation to the word coercion.
Agreed.
That maybe is unfair.
Yeah, agreed. So the reason why I asked you if you were self-coercing it, and the reason why I say that is because I use that as a tool.
Right.
I use that as a positive tool to make decisions that are tough.
Right.
If I make a tough decision, I will purposely coerce myself to believing that it is the right thing, and I'll do it with 100% conviction.
Can you give me an example of doing that?
So when I first was making the decision to leave the European football behind. And I called my friend who was on the podcast before. I called him, and he gave a very valid argument.
Yes.
Full transparency.
Yes.
He maybe got 55% of me there. But there's still 45% of me that's thinking, I got to stay.
Big decision. Huge decision.
Biggest decision to this day, probably.
Yes.
And I then think about what he's saying. Maybe I'm around 75%, but I don't like making decisions at 75% either.
Sure.
I have to then coerce myself into reframing it. This is where I think that the coercion is linked with reframing. Because as you said, selling is also coercion. It is making someone aware of the wider perspective and how it could work for them. If I wanted to sell you these shoes, I'd be, these shoes, although you might not like them, they're comfy. They'll make you have better relationships. You'll earn more money. You'll write better stories. Do you want them?
You see, and I could counter with my own conversion to say, yeah, they might look great, but do you know they're made by someone in Vietnam who's a bit of a slave? So
Yeah.
I could. You point out the benefits, I talk out the negatives. Yeah, absolutely.
We're reframing.
Both, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reframing, and eventually you could get me, I could get you.
That's right.
But whichever one wins, it doesn't mean they're right.
Yeah, absolutely not. That's very true.
Yeah. So the coercion one's very interesting. Now we were talking about all the 4 motivators there. I always say that the most interesting one to me is, I think, the ego. But the one that I relate with most is the ideology.
Okay.
But the ego is, I think it's almost a stoic way of thinking about it. And I only learned about stoicism like probably months ago.
Yep.
Still don't know too much.
Yep.
But I'm aware that it's uncomfortable truth.
Yep.
And I quite like that being an uncomfortable truth.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Pete, tell me a little bit about your change in direction. I want to know the reason a little bit more.
Sure. So, pretty successful business in terms of right back from England. We came to Australia. I opened the business over here, having been brought over by one of the big management consultants in the world. Yeah. Consultancies. Stayed with them for 2 years. Thank you for the water.
Of course.
And realized I could do it for them because we started the new business over here. So I thought, well, if I can do it for them, I can do it for myself. So I ran that business for, as I say, 2001 we came to Australia. Nearly 25 years now, 23 years. When COVID came, most of my work was overseas, so it ground to a halt. It was really quite painful for me. So I actually went into journalism, which is a friend of mine actually contacted me and said, hey, Pete, we're looking for a journalist. And it was a pharmaceutical company, actually pharmaceutical magazine.
Right.
And also a magazine, I won't mention the name of it, but in the retail space. And they're both printed magazines all over Australia, pretty big circulation. And I was basically writing all the business articles for them. Enjoyed that. Got very comfortable writing. Then left there, and because I wanted to go freelance journalism, and I did that, and they still continued to pay me on a word basis, is how it works, to write those articles. Did that all through COVID, and then basically it's not great money. When COVID ended, I sort of went back into the corporate world. I was actually employed by a friend of mine to help him turn around a business that he was running, and I did that for 2 years. Went fairly well. And then just to look, I've just turned 65. I might as well tell the world.
Beep it.
There you go. There you go. Beep it. And that was a bit of an epiphany for me because when I was growing up, that was the age of retirement. No, I don't feel 65.
Yeah.
I just don't. Apparently, I don't look 65.
You don't look it. Oh.
Thank you. That's good. You're right on cue. You read the script.
Yeah.
And so that was when my wife and I, after I'd left that job, because it was getting a bit unpleasant, and they were actually doing some things that I thought weren't ethical, in fact. And I was a director, so I thought, no, I don't want to be part of this. So my wife and I went to Port Macquarie for a weekend away, and this is the conversation that you and I, had after that. And she asked me that, what would we regret doing? We need a change of lifestyle. What are we going to do? And that was the epiphany, I suppose, or the moment of change. We thought, you know what? Don't need to do this anymore. We can be mortgage free. We can buy a house, nice house. Have friends to stay with us. Different lifestyle change. Let's do it. Let's actually have the guts to do it now, while we can still enjoy it. And I can still sail and kayak and take my photographs and do my writing while we still can. And we bought a little caravan. We're going to go touring around Australia and just going to enjoy life rather than leaving it too late.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think it was that moment that flipped the switch?
I think it was the 65.
So if I came to you 1 year ago and I said, Pete, I don't know why, it's probably the first time we would have met, and I just think, Pete, have you ever heard of Port Macquarie? It's a great place.
Okay.
Do you think I could have got you then, or do you think it would have had to be after your 65th?
No, because right in the thick of rebuilding this business, and that was going pretty well. I was enjoying it. I was being paid surprisingly well, actually, for what I was doing. It was very generous, and no, I don't think so. That work wasn't done yet.
Right.
But the writing was still going on in the background, but I just didn't have the time to focus on it. I knew at that point a year ago that the publisher in America had said that we'd like to publish this, but it needs to be quite a lot smaller. So that's kind of been going on, but I just haven't had the time to do it. And it comes back to this passion, or this burning inside me. I've got to do it. And I was just staying up during the night time doing it and trying to do it. It wasn't working. So I just needed to have a pure focus on that and the space to be able to write properly.
Do you ever feel unmotivated?
No.
Why's that?
I'm very blessed with a really enthusiastic, go-get-it attitude. That's just who I am. Always has been. I used to be called Tigger as a kid. That was my nickname, Tigger. You
Yeah.
know,
I do know that one.
yeah, there you go. That's who I am. It's not an effort. I'm just enthusiastic and I have a lot of energy. So yeah, so I'm sure I have been depressed. I did actually, interestingly enough, when we left our house by the water in Saratoga here. That was a mistake. We were literally right on the water. It was beautiful, and I got quite depressed after that. I had a motorcycle accident. Actually, lost my bike.
Really?
My lovely 800 Tiger, Triumph Tiger, I loved. A wallaby leapt out 300 meters from my house.
Seriously?
Yeah, rode the wallaby off. Unfortunately, killed the wallaby. 46 kilos this thing was. Yeah, massive wallaby.
Stone.
Used to sit there by the side of the road every night. I knew he'd be there. Driving along at 50 into 60 because I could see him. He was there. He was always there, and he just launched on it. Bang!
Jeez.
Cracked femur, 7 pieces. My shoulder, knuckle was broken. Pretty beaten up. Never ridden since.
Yeah.
But that was quite. I was incredibly shocked. I found myself in depression, and my wife was actually getting quite worried about me. And no one would ever have thought Pete Howard depressed. No, but yeah, it happened. It happened. So other than then, I wasn't very motivated. Then I found that really tough. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
How long was that for?
9 months, probably something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was getting quite serious.
Yeah.
But I was at church one day, sitting at the back, just literally in the dark at the back, just not knowing what to do with myself. My wife realised I was getting to the point where it wasn't healthy. It was getting quite serious. And she convinced me to go up for prayer, actually, to the front of the church. So I did.
Really?
Changed it. Ridiculous. But it's not ridiculous, actually. It sounds ridiculous, but it's not
Yeah,
ridiculous. I basically just gave it to God, and it was turned off. It was incredible. Second time it's happened to me in my life. I used to smoke.
Really?
I used to smoke. I went to boarding school from the age of 6. At the age of 12, I started smoking.
Wow.
I used to hide behind this screen in the showers. You can get in behind the brickwork, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting addicted. By the time I was 20, I was smoking about 30 a day.
Wow.
I used to play soccer as well as a goalkeeper,
Yeah.
you know, not at the level you were at, but I was playing like what's called county league in the UK, and wasn't getting picked for the team. Tried to give up, couldn't give up. Tried and tried and tried, just didn't have the self-discipline to do it. And one Christmas went to my parents for Christmas. They were Christians, I wasn't. Rocked up with a leather jacket and a denim over it and badges on it, being a jerk, to be perfectly honest, into church like that. Had a cigarette sort of halfway through the service outside, being an absolute jerk. But after the service, one of the kids, who was one of the youth, I suppose, at the church, said, "Hey, apparently you play football. You're a goalkeeper. We're playing a local church tomorrow, Boxing Day. Do you want to be in goal for us?" And I thought, "Oh, this will be a bunch of puffs, church people playing football. I'll help with it." So I said, "All right, whatever." Stupid of me, but I did. I played for them. They were actually pretty good. We had a lot of fun. And then, but when we were doing some running around the pitch beforehand, I was out of breath.
Really?
Which is probably why I'm a goalkeeper. And this guy said, why are you so out of breath? You're supposed to be fit. And I said, well, because I smoked and I can't give it up. He said, do you want me to pray for you? And I just thought, whatever. I said, if you like. So he prayed for me. Never had another cigarette.
Wow.
From that moment. 4 weeks later, I was having a beer with some friends back in Exeter where I was living. Not long after this, I actually went back to live at home and became a Christian. 4 weeks later, I was in Exeter with some friends. I told them, "Oh, this guy prayed for me, and I've stopped smoking." "Oh, don't be stupid. We're all smoking. Have a cigarette." And so I'd had 2 or 3 beers, and so I thought, "I'll just have a cigarette because whatever. I won't start again," which was really stupid of me.
Yeah.
But God was really good. I took 2 puffs on it and threw up.
Yeah. Okay.
So
was that the first time you ever done it? Like throwing up? Sorry.
Oh God, I've thrown up. No,
from cigarettes.
No, oh, absolutely, never thrown up before. It was just so unpleasant. And so this was a guy who 4 weeks before was addicted to 30 a day. I couldn't even take 2 drags of a cigarette without throwing up.
Jeez. Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive. I don't know if that's the sort of thing normally you hear on the podcast, but there you go. It's just me being real.
That's yeah. Okay. Wow. That's crazy. Okay.
So there you go.
Talk me through the next 2 years. What does that look like for you?
Moving to Foster in about 9 weeks time now. 2 days a week, purely focused on writing. We bought a house specifically with a really beautiful environment and somewhere where I can write. Quite deliberate because I'm very motivated by nature and that type of thing. Motivated is the wrong word. I'm inspired. It's the right word. Very inspired by nature and creation and so forth. So that's absolutely what it looks like. We're going to get heavily involved with the church, but my focus is going to purely be on writing. Getting the second book finished. I've written 1 book which is about the size of a Harry Potter book. That's the one that's been accepted for publication once it's reduced.
Yeah.
That reduction is going to go into a second book, so it's a series. They've asked for 2. So that's basically going to be my focus for the next 2 years, and then hopefully beyond that as well.
Okay. When you say inspired by nature, what does that mean?
It just moves me. It just creates a gratefulness in me, a wonder in me, an inspiration in me. One of my favourite poems. I was literally sitting by Brisbane Water, just looking at the view and watching the sun go down, and this beautiful poem came to mind, which I wrote, and it just kind of captures actually what I'm saying in terms of just what it does to me. It just moves me.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that translate to writing then?
But it becomes words,
Okay.
when I'm sitting in amongst nature, particularly by water. Funnily enough, I just find my thoughts flow, and it's very easy to write, and I just see things, and they create ideas for poetry.
So you're writing about the things that you see.
Yeah. Not always, funnily enough,
Okay.
but I've got an Instagram page, and what I do, I take photographs, or I did, haven't sort of put anything on it for a long time. I only had about 400 followers or something
Okay.
like that, which is 0, really. But I would take a photograph, and then I would write something that photograph had inspired in me, that related to that photograph, as a little example, kind of a lesson for life, if you like.
Right.
And I really love doing that. But the phones trigger trains of thought in me. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess if you were writing a poem about podcasting, you were outside, you could probably see an example of a bird flying, and you're thinking, oh, he's spreading the message, or something like that.
That's an example. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That type of thing. Yeah, that's not a bad example.
Yeah.
Just on the cuff. Well done.
Yeah, I'll do a bit of poem writing here and there. I'll do a bit of poem writing.
You might see some geese and in the V formation and talk about leadership.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote a poem the other day about there was some mist the other side of the lake where we were. And there was this mist, and I wrote this poem about how mist becomes droplets that fall on the ground, and then they become little trickles, and they join a river, and they all flow out into the sea. And I turned that into a poem in terms of life's journey and the importance of unity. So all the droplets come together, and the power of unity, and what water can do when there's a lot of people moving in the same direction. So that was just stirred by some mist on a mountain.
Okay. Interesting. Tell me your most impactful piece of writing that you've done. Maybe you could share it if you've got it.
Ooh.
Or give me the context behind why, even.
All right. I'm going to read you a poem that I wrote at the end of my depression.
Okay, wow.
When I'd come out of it.
Yeah.
I've got 4 or 5. I've turned over the corners just in case you ask me. So this one's called Tunnel Vision, and I'm going to look at the camera to read it.
Yeah.
Tunnel vision. Does life sometimes seem like a tunnel to you, uphill with no light at the end? At times do you feel that you're lost and alone and silently scream for a friend? Those screams become echoes of words from your past, returning to hurt you again. Then searching the shadows that dwell in your mind, you find all your failures again. It's easy to feel that this tunnel is real, convinced there's no way you can cope. But where there are shadows, there has to be light, and where there is light, there is hope. So stop for a moment and look past those walls, and watch as they crumble away. There's light in the sky and the echoes have gone. You'll only hear one voice today. The Lord calls your name in the rustle of leaves. He shouts in the crash of a wave. He sings you a song in the voice of a bird. It's you that he's longing to save. That wind on your cheeks is the breath of the Lord. His tears can be seen in the dew. The clouds drifting high in the sky overhead are filled with his dreams, just for you. Instead of your tunnel, run into his arms. Say yes to the one God above. Those arms bought your freedom when nailed to a cross. Now, let them surround you with love. So there's an example.
Powerful. Okay.
I hope so.
Wow. That's a lot to dissect, knowing the context behind it. Because it sounds like, I mean, obviously I don't know what it takes to write a poem like that. Could take months, could take a few seconds. You did a fair bit then. So I don't know what goes into that, but it's very interesting. Yeah. To me, it sounds like the reflection.
That's kind of, well, I've taken my experience, I suppose, and how I felt, and then I've kind of looked, how did I come out of this? And it was basically just saying, God, help me. I'm at the point of wanting to end all this. And he did. And I'm so incredibly grateful. And, and I see God everywhere, particularly in, as I said, those things at the end, the dew, the crash of a wave, the sound of a bird, whatever. I just see God in those things.
Okay. Yeah. I see that. Okay. Interesting. Wow. That's,
Is that powerful?
Yeah, because I don't hear things like that out of words typically. Most of the powerful things that I hear or see are through like films, for example.
Yep.
So for me, obviously that's because I'm younger. We don't really listen to poems too often.
They're not as popular media as they used to, but I'm told what I write is quite powerful. And
yeah.
So that's what I guess what I was alluding to earlier on when people say, look, there's something about your poems. I hope there is, and people's reaction generally is like, wow, which is good.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, how could this be, I guess, shown to a younger audience so it's more digestible? Because
Indeed.
Poems are digestible.
Yep.
But the attention span of someone like, to be fair, I have a pretty good attention span because I try and stay away from TikTok and things like that.
Sure, yeah.
But someone who is addicted to TikTok.
Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah.
And so how can we get this to a wider audience that is more digestible? The first thing that came into my mind, you like visualization quite a lot.
I'm quite visual, yep.
So each kind of not paragraph, each line could almost have its own picture to represent that.
Yep.
And I think I've seen it before when I was doing English at school, where it's like I'd never do the reading for the English class. I'd always just like watch a video on it.
Sure.
And an easy way that they'd always like translate that have the reading for it and then put a picture up so you can visualize that.
Yep.
That's something that I was just thinking about how that could be easily done.
That's how I see the photography kind of going with the poetry. But I've got to say, I struggle with. I mean, that one would be fairly easy because I've got images already I could use for most of that. Perhaps don't have a picture of a tunnel, but I can find that. But there's other poems I've got. There's one, for instance, about drugs, trying to put kids off to doing drugs. I'd find it incredibly hard to find photos for that. So I wouldn't know where to start.
I don't know if you want photos of people. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure. So I don't have any.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be my photography.
Yeah.
That's, again, talking about ego. I'd love it to be my photography. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be, absolutely not. It could be imagery. I mean, I actually, with a lot of my training slides, I've often used sort of 3D images, computer generated images, not AI generated, so don't look real, but they're deliberately like almost cartoonish.
Yeah.
And they can work quite well as well. But I think that's not really serious enough for some of the messages I'm trying to portray.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I've got a long way to go in terms of working how to present it.
So what do you want to do with your personal brand?
I want it to become well known. Simple as that.
Do you want to be the face of it?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
So the podcasting thing is something you're going to take pretty seriously then, or at least some form of media?
Some form of media, yeah. I don't know whether it'll be podcasting or whether it'll be YouTube. I don't know. I'm an old dinosaur when it comes to this sort of stuff. I'm not next to a young gun like you, but I don't know. Hopefully I'm teachable.
Yeah.
But I do think it needs to be me. You've mentioned I have a good voice for it, and I've been told that many times.
Yeah.
And I think certainly in terms of the poetry, I feel it needs to be me because I've written it, and there's something about me reading it that just I think adds something. I might be wrong, but I think.
No, I agree. I think that having you as the voice makes sense. I think, as I said, your voice naturally just sounds good reading. Also, you're very articulate, and then also having an English accent. Like, obviously, because I don't hear the English accent too often.
Oh, jolly good. I'll keep doing that then.
Yeah. It's like a clean way of giving a message.
Sure.
Hey guys, I don't want to interrupt this episode, but gotta do what I gotta do. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you leave a comment if you enjoyed it. If you want any to give any feedback, even just leave that below. We're open to everything. Join the Patreon, guys. There's gonna be a lot more stuff on there. We want to hear from you guys as well. We want to get you involved. If you want to be beta testers to the SCULPTED app, let me know. I can make that happen. Try and get involved at any level. What we're doing at Live Free, guys, make sure you check what we're doing there. Liam's got his own personal YouTube channel. He's always uploading. I've got my own personal YouTube channel that I've started uploading twice a month now. It's going to be cinematic like I am now, right? I've got the light above, got a cool camera. That's what I'm going to be working on, guys. So make sure you follow Live Free Diaries. SCULPTED app. We're doing great stuff over there. Additionally, we want to grow this podcast, guys. And the only way we can do that is through your guys' help. So make sure you subscribe, listen to us on all audio platforms. We're everywhere. So make sure you interact with us. Make sure that you help us grow, because the only way that we can grow this podcast is through you. We'll get better guests. We've always had great guests from the get-go. But we'll get even better guests on. production value will go up. I've got my studio, but we need to get Liam his studio, and the only way we can do that is through monetizing this platform. So make sure you do that, guys. And I'll go back to the episode. I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think the English accent makes it clean and crisp, and I think you're probably right. And it's probably actually, less tainted is the wrong word, but if people hear an American accent or a different accent, people associate lots with it. But English is so global,
very neutral.
That's the word. Thank you. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I agree. Good. Perfect. Okay. Well,
there you go.
Pete, I think aware of even the SD cards, they're probably tiring their way out a little bit.
Indeed.
But the way that I wrap up each of my podcast episodes is asking the guests what are 3 ways that they sculpt themselves every single day. Now, what I mean by that is just ways that you improve yourself every day.
Indeed.
What are 3 things for you?
I have a quiet time in the morning.
Okay.
Which means I read the Bible. I have at the moment I'm working through a 1-year devotional for men, book called Man in the Mirror.
Okay.
Awesome book. And that I find like God, not every day, but very often God speaks to me through reading His Word, reading the Bible. It may be something that's admonition, just say, pull yourself together in this area. It may be, here's an idea for you. It may be just a sense of go and do this or talk to these people. Who knows? So that's one thing I do. I talk to my wife a lot. We actually we're reading a book at the moment about transition because we're in a period of transition. With this move, fairly significant change to our lives, and moving 3.5 hours away from here, so rebuilding a complete new set of friends and all the rest of it. We'll still be able to come down, but you want local friends. So conversations with my wife, we're pretty honest with each other. She keeps me on track. She's a good girl. We've married 35 years this June, next month. So that would be another way I do it. And a third way. Look, I've just been teaching a group of young men that I'm mentoring in our church, actually. And I need to take my own medicine sometimes on this. I've been talking to them about the importance of having a person or a few people in your life who are they've been given permission to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have a couple of guys in my life like that who, when I'm struggling with something or when I think I need some input or something, I go to them and they can be brutal with me. Yeah. And I appreciate that because I trust them. So that for me is important. But being in a position of, I'm going to call it leadership. These are extraordinarily capable young men in our church. A couple of them newly married, some of them like 18, 19, that sort of 18 to 25 age group. Being responsible, if you like, for their development and growth, or not wholly responsible, but having a responsibility in their lives to mentor them. You're not right in the head if you don't take it seriously. Yeah. And that means I have to be very responsible for myself because I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm not going to go and tell them to do something if I'm not doing myself. So, and I noticed as I was very rarely in a leadership position at school. I was never made a prefect. I was very naughty, always in trouble, always. But my headmaster, when I left my boarding school, told my parents, he said, we're going to miss Peter because his naughtiness was never nastiness, and I'll take that. Yeah. That's true, just a prankster and a joker. But the first time I was put in a position of leadership, it did something to me. I suddenly took things so much more seriously because I suddenly realised actually this is kind of important. So that's my 3 ways. Awesome. Having people in my life I'm prepared to have in leadership over me, having feedback from my wife, and talking honestly with my wife, and having meaningful quiet times. Amazing. There you go. Pete, well, it was a pleasure to get you on the podcast. Absolutely. I hope that you got something out of it as well. Huge. Very good. You're very professional. I've enjoyed it. I'm going to be watching some of the other things you've done. And for a young man at your age, well done. I appreciate it, Pete. Thank you so much. It was great to do it with you. Good stuff. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Pete. Very good. Thanks, folks. That was a really good episode, Pete. Thank you very much.